Hey guys, tonight we are going on a journey, but not one of grand battles, gleaming knights, or wise kings. No, tonight we're going somewhere much more intimate, much more personal. We're stepping into the worn-out leather shoes of a medieval peasant on what should be the happiest day of his life, his wedding day. Except, there's a shadow hanging over the celebration. A dreadful, unspoken rule that says the night doesn't belong to him. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun does, not because of a rooster, but because of a knot of cold dread in the pit of your stomach that has been tightening for weeks, for a fleeting moment. As your eyes adjust to the soft grey light filtering through the single, unglazed window of your cottage, you almost forget. Today is your wedding day. The thought should be warm, like fresh bread. Instead, it's a stone. The air is cool and smells of damp earth, old wood smoke, and the faint, sweet scent of the herbs hanging from the rafters to dry. This is your home, or rather, the hut you are allowed to live in. It's small, just one room. The floor is packed earth. The walls are wattle and double lattice of woven branches packed with clay and straw. You can see your breath in the air. Use it up on your straw-stuffed mattress. The rough wool of your blanket scratching against your skin. Everything you own is in this room: a crude wooden table, 2 stools you made yourself, a small collection of pottery, and the iron cooking pot that was your mother's, your most valuable possession. Today, you will marry Ilara. Her name is a whisper of wind in the trees. You picture her face, her eyes the color of the summer sky after rain. The way a stray piece of auburn hair always escapes her braided curls by her ear. You've known her your whole life. You played together as children in the muddy lanes of the village, chased geese, and stolen rippy apples from the Lord's orchard, a crime that earned you both a day in the stocks. Growing up meant working alongside each other in the fields. Your lives dictated by the rhythm of the seasons and the ringing of the church bell. Sowing, reaping, threshing. Your love didn't blossom in a manicured garden with poetry and lute music. It grew slowly, quietly, like a stubborn wildflower pushing its way through a crack in a stone wall. It's a love built on shared hardship, knowing glances across a field of barley, and the simple comfort of a familiar presence. But the joy of this day is a flickering candle flame in a storm. Because there is another presence that looms over everything: the Lord. His castle, a monstrous silhouette of cold stone on the hill, is the first thing you see when you step outside in the morning, and the last thing you see before you bar your door at night. You have never spoken to him. You have seen him only a handful of times. A remote figure on a powerful horse, draped in fabrics you can't even name, surrounded by men with swords. He owns the land you work, the cottage you sleep in, the very grain you grind into flour. By law and by custom, he owns a piece of you. And tonight, he will claim a piece of your marriage. This is the right of the Lord, the droit du seigneur right, a whisper in the taverns, a bitter joke among the old men, a source of terror for every young couple. Historians, centuries from now, will argue about it. They'll debate whether it was a codified law, a widespread custom, or merely a brutal but infrequent abuse of power. Some will suggest it was often just a threat, a way for the Lord to extort a redemption fee from his serfs' attacks on marriage that a peasant like you could never hope to pay. But for you, no, in the chilling morning air of your wedding day, the academic debate is meaningless. The fear is real. It's in the pit of your stomach. It's in the sympathetic but downcast eyes of your neighbors. It's a poison that seeps into what should be the purest of moments. You stand up and walk to the small wooden chest at the foot of your bed. You pull out the tunic you saved for this day. It's not new, but been mended and washed. It's the best you have. As you pull it over your head, you catch your reflection in the bucket of water by the door. You see a young man. His face tense, his jaw set. You see the fear in your own eyes. Today you become a husband. But you are not your own man. And tonight, your bride will not be your own either. The celebration must go on. But it feels like a feast held in a graveyard. You step out of your cottage, your worn leather boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. The village is stirring. Smoke rises from the chimneys of the handful of other cottages huddled along the muddy track. You see old man Hemlock coaxing his stubborn donkey, and the baker's wife, her arms white with flour, waving at you with a sad-eyed smile. Every greeting you receive this morning is tinged with the same unspoken pity. They know. Of course, they know. In a place this small, there are no secrets, only shared burdens. Your path takes you to the cottage at the other end of the village, where Alara lives with her family. It's a little larger than yours, a testament to her father's skill as a carpenter, but it's made of the same humble materials. The door is open. As you approach, you can hear the low murmur of voices inside her mother's, her younger sister's. It's a sound that should be joyous, full of pre-wedding excitement. But it's subdued, heavy. Her mother sees you at the threshold and beckons you in. The room is crowded with family, but they part, creating a path for you, and then you see her. Ilara is standing near the hearth, the soft light from the fire catching the reed in her hair, and she is wearing her wedding dress. It isn't white. White is for nobility, for people who don't have to worry about mud and soot. Her dress is the color of a deep summer sky, a rich blue made from woad, the dye plant that grows wild in the meadows. It's her best dress, a garment she has spent months weaving and stitching herself. It's made of wool, simple and durable, but she has embroidered the neckline and cuffs with thread the color of pale honey, tiny, painstaking stitches forming patterns of leaves and vines. In a world of brown and grey, she is a splash of impossible color, a promise of beauty in a hard life. You stop a few feet away, unable to speak. All the words you've ever known seem to abandon you. You just look at her, and she looks at you. Her smile is a fragile thing, a piece of delicate glass that might shatter at the slightest touch. You see the effort it takes her to hold it in place. Her eyes, usually so bright and full of life, are shadowed. Her mother comes forward, holding a woven girdle, a belt of braided leather and colored string. This is a special part of the wedding attire. For a peasant girl, a girdle was more than just a belt, it was a symbol of her virtue and status, often one of her most prized possessions. Some were even passed down through generations. Historians today still puzzle over the intricate regional variations and meanings of these items, as few have survived. This one is new, a gift from her parents. It is meant to be a symbol of her purity and her transition into a married woman. As her mother ties the girdle around Ilaria's waist, the irony hangs thick and suffocating in the air, a symbol of the very thing that will be stolen from her tonight. You clench your fists at your sides, your knuckles white. You feel a surge of primal, useless rage, rage at the Lord, at the world, at your own powerlessness. You want to scream, to smash something, to grab Ilaria's hand and run until this village and that castle on the hill are nothing but a bad memory. But you don't. You can't. Where would you go? The forests are the Lord's. The next village is part of his brother's domain. To be a runaway serf is to be a ghost, hunted and with no place in the world. So you stand there, a statue of silent fury, and you watch. Ilara's younger sister, barely a woman herself, begins to braid wildflowers into her hair, cornflowers to match her dress, small white daisies, then sprigs of lavender. With each flower, a little more of the bride she is supposed to be emerges. She looks beautiful, and it breaks your heart. She finally meets your gaze again, and in that one look, 1,000 things are said. She sees your anger, your shame. You see her fear, her resolve. There is no judgment in her eyes, Only a shared understanding of this nightmare you are forced to walk through together. This is the foundation of your marriage, not a bed of roses, but a shared abyss. You have to believe it's a foundation you can build on. You have to. It's the only hope you have left. Her father, a quiet, stoic man with hands as tough as old leather, places his hand on your shoulder. He squeezes. Just once. A gesture of solidarity, of apology, of shared masculine humiliation. He cannot protect his own daughter. You cannot protect your own wife. It is time. The village priest will be waiting. You take a deep breath. The air thick with the smell of wood smoke and unsaid words. You let the rage subside, burying it deep inside you. You will need it later. So now, you must play your part. You walk forward, the packed earth floor cold beneath your boots, and offer Ilara your arm. She takes it, her hand trembling slightly, as you turn to lead her out of the cottage and into the daylight. You feel the weight of every eye in the village upon you. The performance is about to begin. You step out into the weak morning sun, Alorica's hand resting on your arm. The world seems to shrink to the narrow, muddy lane that winds through the village toward the small stone church. Every door is open. Every window is filled with faces. The villagers are out. They are your audience. The air is filled with a low murmur, a sound like a distant hive of bees. It's the sound of the village whispering. You try not to look at them, focusing instead on the path ahead, on placing one foot in front of the other. But you can feel their eyes on you. You've known these people your entire life. You know their faces, their families, their hardships. Today, however, they are strangers. Their gazes are a mixture of emotions so tangled it makes your head spin. There is pity. You see it in the eyes of the older women, who have witnessed the same miserable play unfold countless times. They look at Ilara with a profound, weary sadness, and then their eyes shift to you, their expressions softening with a sympathy that feels like a physical weight on your shoulders. It's a pity that says, "We know your pain, little one, and there is nothing we can do." It makes you feel small, like a child. There is a strained, almost morbid curiosity. The younger children, who don't fully understand the grim subtext of the day, stare with wide, unblinking eyes. They see a wedding, a pretty dress, flowers, but the older ones, the teenagers, they know. They watch with a fascinated horror. This is their future, too. They are watching a preview of their own eventual humiliation, and they can't look away. And then there is the most cutting gaze of all, the one from the other young men. They stand in small, silent groups, their arms crossed. They don't offer congratulations, they just watch. In their eyes, you see a reflection of your own impotence. They look at you, and they see themselves. Each of them knows that one day, they will be the one walking this path. Their jaw tight, their heart a cold stone in their chest. Their silence is not one of disrespect, but of a grin. Shared understanding. It is an acknowledgement of the invisible chains you all wear. A few people try to break the tension. Someone throws a handful of dried grain, a symbol of fertility. It's a hollow gesture. The grain lands on your shoulders and in Ilara's hair, and you both flinch as if you've been struck. An old woman shouts a blessing for a long life and many children, and the words curdle in the air. The desire for children is a complicated one for you now, poisoned by the question of who exactly would be the father. This, you know, is a long-standing fear. Historians would later note that the Jew Prima in Octis was not just about a single might. It was about asserting ownership, a way for our Lord to demonstrate his control over the very lineage and bloodlines of his people. You pass the alehouse. The door is propped open, and a few of the village's harder drinkers are already inside. Their voices louder than they should be. One of them raises a wooden mug to you in a mock toast. "To the Lord," he slurs, a bitter, sarcastic grin on his face. Another man quiets him, pulling him back into the shadows of the tavern. But the damage is done. The words hang in the air. A public declaration of your shame. Elara's grip on your arm tightens. You can feel her trembling, but she keeps her head held high, her eyes fixed on the church star ahead. Her strength is a quiet miracle. It's the only thing keeping you from falling apart. You want to lean over and whisper something to her, something reassuring. But what could you possibly say? Don't worry, it will be all right. They would be the cruelest lies. So you say nothing. Your silence is a shared language. It's the only honest thing you have to offer her right now. You both know this procession is a performance. It's a required ritual. You must appear to be celebrating. You must go through the motions, to show defiance. To weep openly or to rage would be to invite punishment, not just for you, but for your families, for the whole village. The Lord's power relies on this forced compliance, on this public theater of consent. And so you walk, your back straight, a grim parody of a joyful bridegroom. The whispers follow you, a constant, rustling soundtrack to your humiliation. They are the sound of a community that is both your witness and your fellow prisoner. The church stands at the heart of the village, a sturdier structure than any of your cottages, built of cold, grey stone. Its small bell, the one that marks the hours of your working days, is silent. A wedding should be heralded with joyful ringing, but not this one. A silent bell is more fitting. As you step from the mud of the lane onto the worn stone threshold, the air changes. It becomes cooler, smelling of old incense, damp stone, and melting beeswax. The inside of the church is dim, the only light coming from a few high, narrow windows and the flickering candles on the altar. The space feels vast and hollow. A handful of villagers, mostly older family members, are seated on the rough wooden benches, their faces indistinct in the gloom. They are the core witnesses, the ones obliged to be here. At the front, waiting before the simple stone altar, stands Father Michael. He is an old man, his back stooped from decades of bowing in prayer and tending his small garden. His face is a web of wrinkles, and his eyes, when they meet yours, are filled with a deep, ancient weariness. He is a servant of God, but he is also a subject of the Lord. His loyalties are perpetually divided. You and Elara walk the short aisle, your footsteps echoing in the silence. You take your places before him. He opens the heavy, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and soft with age. He begins the rite. His voice is thin, ready, but it fills the small church. He speaks in Latin, the language of God, a language you don't understand. You catch a few words you've heard 100 times: Pater, Filius, Spiritus Sanctus, but the rest is a holy mystery. For a moment, the ritual is comforting. The ancient words, the solemnity of the place, it almost makes you feel like this is a real wedding, a sacred union protected by a power higher than any earthly lord. He switches to the common tongue for the vows. He asks you if you will take Elara as your wife, to heaven to hold, in sickness and in health, until death do you part. I will, you say, your voice sounding strange and distant to your own ears. He turns to Elara. Her face is pale in the candlelight. He asks her the same question. She hesitates for a fraction of a second. A tiny, almost imperceptible pause. In that moment, the entire church seems to hold its breath. You feel a flash of terror. What if she says no? What if she refuses? Dear, no. In front of God and everyone, it would be an act of rebellion so profound it would shatter the fragile peace of the village. But then she speaks, her voice soft but clear. I will. He blesses the ring. It's not gold or silver. It's a simple band of braided bronze you traded 3 of your best rabbit pelts for. It's a fortune to you. As you slide it onto her finger, her hand is ice cold. You look into her eyes, and for a second, just a second, the rest of the world falls away. It's just you and her. You are her husband. She is your wife, in the eyes of God. You are bound together. But then Father Michael speaks again, and the illusion shatters. He offers a prayer for your new life together, a prayer for your home, a prayer for the children you may have, and every word feels like a lie. The church can offer you salvation in the next life, but it offers no protection in this one. This is a conflict that has plagued the church for centuries. The eternal question of render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. But what happens when Caesar wants what you believe belongs only to God? Historians still debate the role local clergy played in customs like droit, seigneur, right. Some priests, it's argued, actively condemned it as a sin, risking the Lord's wrath. Others, like Father Michael, chose a path of weary pragmatism, offering spiritual comfort while accepting the harsh realities of the feudal power structure they were embedded in. They knew that a lord who felt his authority was questioned by the church could make life very difficult, perhaps by cutting off the ties and support the parish depended on. Father Michael concludes the ceremony. He makes the sign of the cross. Go in peace, he says, but there is no peace. He knows it. He looks at you, not as a priest looking at a parishioner, but as one man looking at another. And his eyes are filled with an apology. He cannot speak. He has performed his duty. He has bound you in holy matrimony, and now he must step aside and let the Lord perform his own unholy ritual. You turn away from the altar, a married man. Laura's hand is in yours. The cool bronze of the ring is small, solid reality against your skin. As you walk back down the aisle, the few people on the benches stand. Their faces are grim. There are no smiles, no joyful tears. The ceremony is over. You have been pronounced husband and wife. Then now, the true waiting begins. Leaving the cool dimness of the church, you step back into the grey afternoon light. The world outside seems harsher now. The colors more muted. The small crowd of villagers is still there, waiting. A few of the women have prepared a small celebration feast at your cottage, a testament to the stubborn human impulse to find joy even in the darkest of circumstances. It's a feast of defiance, a small act of normalcy in a day that is anything but. As you and Delara begin the short walk back to your home, now your home, your eyes are drawn, as they always are, to the hill that looms over the village. There it is, the castle. It's not a fairy tale castle of soaring spires and bright banners. It's a fortress, a blunt instrument of power carved from dark, weather-stained stone. It looks less like it was built and more like it grew out of the rock itself. A natural predator, a single, formidable stone keep rises from the center, surrounded by a thick curtain wall with serene electrons that look like jagged teeth against the sky. There are no large, welcoming windows, only narrow slits, dark and menacing, like the eyes of a reptile. You've lived your entire life in its shadow. When you were a child, it was a place of mystery and awe. You and the other village children would dare each other to get closer to the outer walls, imagining the knights and ladies and great feasts within. But as you grew older, they are curdled into something else. Resentment, fear. The castle is a constant, physical reminder of your station in life. Its stone walls represent the unbridgeable gap between the Lord's world and yours. Inside those walls, there is warmth, food in abundance, wine. There are soft beds and roaring fires. Outside, where you live, there is the struggle for survival. The castle's shadow literally falls across the fields you work, a daily reminder of who reaps the true rewards of your labor. You sow the seeds, you tend the crops, you harvest the grain under the hot sun, and the vast majority of it is carted up that hill and disappears behind those stone walls. Today, the castle looks more menacing than ever. It's no longer just a symbol of economic oppression. It's a personal threat. You stare at it, trying to imagine the world inside. You picture stone corridors, cold and echoing, tapestries on the walls depicting hunts and battles, a great hall with a massive fireplace, and somewhere in that stone labyrinth, a man you've never met is waiting. He is going about his day, perhaps eating, perhaps talking with his steward, all the while knowing that tonight, your bride will be brought to him. For him, It's a trivial matter. An entitlement. I footnote in his day. For you, it is the shattering of your world. That immense, casual power is the most terrifying thing of all. This isn't an act of passion or rage on his part. It is, to him, the natural order of things. You are his property, and the people who live on his land are, in a sense, an extension of that property. Some historians argue that the concept of the right of the Lord was less about personal gratification and more about a symbolic display of dominance. By claiming the first night, the Lord wasn't just claiming a woman, he was stamping his ownership on the family unit, on the next generation, on the very fabric of the community. It was a brutal, intimate reminder that he held the power of life, death, and everything in between. You look away from the castle. Your jaw tight. You look at Lara. She is also staring at the stone fortress on the hill, her expression unreadable. Does she feel the same cold dread you? Does she imagine the same things you can't ask? You can only hold her hand a little tighter. The path to your cottage seems impossibly long. With every step, the castle seems to watch you. A silent, unblinking stone predator. It's waiting for the sun to set. It knows it doesn't have to hurry. It has all the power and all the time in the world. You feel like a mouse scurrying under the gaze of a hawk. You can try to celebrate, to eat and drink and pretend. But the shadow of that castle falls over every bite of food, every sip of ale, every forced smile. It is the uninvited guest at your wedding feast. And soon, its emissary will come to collect its due. Your cottage, which felt so empty and lonely this morning, is now crowded and loud. The air is thick with the smell of roasting chicken, a rare luxury, and the sweet, earthy scent of ale. Day long, rough-hewn plank has been set up on trestles to serve as a banquet table. The villagers have brought what they could: a loaf of dark rye bread, a wedge of hard cheese, a pot of peas porridge. It's a meager feast by any standard but yours, but it represents the generosity of a community that has little to give. You sit at the head of the table, Lara beside you. People are talking, laughing, trying their best to create a festive atmosphere. Someone is playing a pipe, the lively, bouncing tune that feels wildly out of place, like a funeral dirge played at a christening. You eat without tasting. You drink without feeling the warmth of the ale. Your senses are muted, all your awareness focused on the sounds outside the open door. Every rustle of leaves, every dog bark, sends a jolt of anxiety through you. Lara is a statue of composure beside you. She speaks to her mother. She smiles at her sister. She accepts the clumsy compliments of the villagers. You marvel at her strength. Or perhaps it's not strength. Perhaps it's a mask, as heavy and suffocating as your own. The sun begins to set. The light slanting through the doorway turns from gold to a deep, bloody orange. The shadows in the cottage lengthen. The laughter and chatter begin to die down. The pauses between conversations growing longer. The piper's tune falters, then stops altogether. The pretense is becoming too difficult to maintain. The whole village is holding its breath, waiting. And then you hear it. At first, it's just a faint, rhythmic thudding, a vibration you feel more than you hear. But it grows steadily louder, more distinct, hoofbeats, not the slow, trotting sound of a farmer's donkey or a cart horse. This is the confident, powerful sound of a well-shod warhorse, a sound that means only one thing: the castle. A hush falls over the cottage. Every face turns toward the door. The sound gets closer, a steady, relentless thump, thump, thump on the hard-packed earth of the village lane. It's the sound of approaching fate. Two figures appear, silhouetted against the dying light. They are mounted on horses that seem enormous compared to the village's own beasts of burden. They are the Lord's men, his reeves, or bailiffs, the enforcers of his will. They don't wear gleaming armor, but they don't need to. They wear boiled leather jerkins and steel caps, and each has a long swerve strapped to his hip. Their authority isn't in their armor. but in the casual way they carry their weapons. And the cold, dismissive looks on their faces. They don't dismount. They simply rein in their horses just outside your door, their massive forms blocking the light. The man in front, a burly figure with a thick beard and a scar that pulls one side of his mouth into a permanent sneer, scans the room. His eyes pass over the frightened faces of your friends and family without a flicker of interest. They land on you, then shift to Alara. There's a long, terrible silence. No one moves. No one speaks. The only sound is the heavy breathing of the horses and the creak of saddle leather. "The Lord," the man says, his voice a low growl, sends his compliments to the happy couple. He says the words happy couple with such profound sarcasm that it feels like a slap. He awaits as too. It is time. The words are not a request. They are a command. An invoice being served. Some scholars speculate that in many cases, this moment was the real purpose of the tradition, not the act itself. But this public demonstration of submission, it was a ritualized humiliation of the groom and a reminder to the entire village of who was in charge. The act of the Lord's men arriving. The groom's powerlessness to stop them, this was the core of the psychological dominance. Your blood runs cold. Your hands, resting on the table, are clenched so tightly your knuckles are white. This is it. The moment you have been dreading all day, all week, all your life. The abstract fear has now become to men on horseback, waiting at your door. Every instinct in you screams to fight, to protect, to defy, to stand up and shout no. But you look at Alara. Her face is as white as bone. You look at her father, his face a mask of anguish. You look at your friends, their heads bowed, unable to meet your gaze. To resist now would mean a beating, or worse. It might mean your cottage being burned to the ground. It might mean being thrown out of your land, your family left to starve. The Lord's power is absolute. The two men at the door are just the calloused fingertips of a very long, very strong arm. With a slowness that feels agonizing, Alara stands up. Her chair scrapes against the dirt floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. She doesn't look at you. She can't. She keeps her eyes fixed on the floor as she walks toward the door, her blue dress a beacon of color in the encroaching gloom. Her mother lets out a choked sob. That one sound breaks the spell of silence. A single crack in the dam of forced composure, but no one else moves. They are all frozen, witnesses to a slow-motion abduction that is sanctioned by tradition. As Alara takes a step towards the door, a desperate, foolish thought flashes through your mind. It's a fantasy you've entertained in the darkest hours of the night. A sliver of hope so thin it's almost transparent, the redemption fee. The Eulogium, as some would call it. The bride ale, the bull penny. It had many names. It's the idea that this whole dreadful ritual isn't about the act itself, but about money. A tax, pure and simple. A payment a serf could make to the Lord to redeem his bride, to buy back her first night. You've heard the stories from traveling merchants and old soldiers who have seen other parts of the world. They speak of places where the Lord never actually takes the bride, where the arrival of his men is just the cue for the groom's father to present a purse of coins, or perhaps a prize ox, to settle the debt. You cling to this thought like a drowning man to a piece of driftwood. Maybe this is all a performance, a cruel, elaborate piece of theater designed to squeeze the last few pennies from a man who has nothing. Your eyes dart around the small, crowded cottage. You look at your own hands, calloused and empty. You look at the meager feast on the table. The chicken, which seemed like such an extravagance an hour ago, now looks pathetic. What do you have to offer? You own nothing that the Lord doesn't already own in the first place. Your home, your tools, the very ground you stand on, it's all his. The concept of you paying him for something feels like a bitter joke. You would be trying to buy something from him using his own property. The historical reality of this redemption fee is, like the right itself, a subject of intense debate among academics. Was it a genuine alternative, a formalized way out, or was it just another layer of the myth? A story people told themselves to make the horror more palatable. Some surviving feudal charters and records do mention payments due upon a serf's marriage, but historians argue whether these were a specific fee to waive the droit dues seigneur or simply a standard marriage tax, one of many dues a peasant owed his master. The line between a tax and extortion is, after all, a very fine one. For a peasant, the distinction would be meaningless. It was money they did not have. The late rave on horseback seems to read your mind. His mocking gaze sweeps over your impoverished home, lingering for a moment on the food, then on the warm clothes of your family. A cruel smile plays on his lips. The Lord is a generous man, he says, his voice dripping with false magnanimity. He recognizes the sanctity of marriage. He pauses, letting the hope hang in the air for a heart-stopping second. A payment of 5 silver shillings will satisfy his claim. 5 silver shillings. The words fall into the silent room like stones into a deep well. A collective, silent gasp seems to ripple through the crowd. 5 shillings. To a man like the Lord, it's nothing. The price of a good bottle of wine. Perhaps. To you, it's a king's ransom. A skilled craftsman might, if he is lucky and works tirelessly, earn that much in half a year. For a peasant farmer like you, who rarely even sees coinage and deals mostly in barter, it is an impossible, astronomical sum. You might as well ask for the moon. The hope that had flickered in your chest is instantly extinguished, replaced by a cold, hard despair. The offer isn't an offer at all. It's an insult. It's a calculated cruelty designed to underscore your poverty, to make it clear that there is no escape. HES not just telling you that you can't protect your wife, HES putting a price tag on your failure. You look at Alara's father. He is a carpenter, a man with a trade. He is better off than most in the village. But you see the look of utter defeat on his face. He averts his eyes, his shoulders slumping. He doesn't have it. No one here does. The reeve knows this. His smile widens. He has made his point. The performance is complete. He has demonstrated not only the Lord's power but also the Lord's generosity in offering a way out that no one can take. He has made your humiliation absolute. He gestures curtly with his head towards Alara. Time to go. The fantasy is over. The last, desperate hope is gone. There is no bargaining, no negotiation. There is only the cold, hard reality of your poverty and his power. You watch, helpless, as Alara takes the final steps toward the doorway, toward the waiting horses and the dark night beyond. The fee was never a path to salvation, it was just another stone in the wall that separates your world from his. Alara reaches the threshold. She stands for a moment, a small, vibrant figure of blue framed by the dark doorway and the hulking shapes of the horses. The last rays of sunset catch the wildflowers in her hair, a final, cruel touch of beauty. She turns. Her eyes find yours across the crowded, silent room. In this moment, the noise of the world fades away. The shuffling feet, the muffled sobs of her mother, the creak of the saddle leather, it all dissolves into a distant hum. There is only her face, her eyes, and what you see in them will be etched into your memory. A permanent scar on your soul. It's not just fear. The fear is there. Of course, stark and undisguised in the widening of her pupils. It's a primal, animal terror of the unknown, of impending violation. But there is so much more layered on top of it. A complex tapestry of emotions that a lifetime of poetry could not unravel. There is apology. I look so full of sorrow it pierces you to the core. It's an apology for what she is about to endure, for the stain this will leave on your marriage before it has even begun. It's an apology for the fact that her body, which was meant to be a part of your shared union, is being treated as a piece of property to be claimed. It's a look that says, I'm sorry for the ghost this will put between us. There is a flicker of defiance, a tiny, burning ember in the depths of her gaze. It's a refusal to be completely broken. It's a silent promise that the person who leaves this cottage will not be the same person who returns, but that she will return. It's a look that says, they can take this from me, but they cannot take all of me. And there is love, clear and unwavering. It's a look that cuts through the humiliation and the terror. It's a reminder of the bond you share. The bond that was forged in the fields and whispered in the twilight. It's a love that acknowledges the horror of this moment but insists that it is not the end of your story. It's a look that says, simply, remember me, remember us. You want to say something. You want to shout her name. You want to give her some word of comfort, some promise of vengeance, but your throat is tight. Your tongue a leaden weight in your mouth. What can you say? Your words are as useless as your fists. So you just hold her gaze. You pour every ounce of your own love, your own rage, your own helpless sorrow into that single, silent connection. You try to communicate what you cannot speak. I am here. I am with you. I will be here when you return. This does not break us. One of the Lord's men, impatient, reaches down from his horse. He doesn't touch her. He just gestures with his gloved hand, a dismissive flick of the wrist. Time's up. And Laura breaks the gaze first. She has to. She turns her back on you, on your home, on your new marriage. She steps out into the night. The second drive, a younger, leader man, dismounts. Without a word, he clasps Laura's arm. He is not rough, not yet. But his grip is firm, proprietary. He leads her to the first horse, to the bearded man who seems to be in charge. The man leans down, grabs her by the waist with one powerful arm, and lifts her as if she weighs nothing. He places her in front of him on the saddle, her simple blue dress stark against the dark leather and his own drab tunic. She doesn't cry out. She doesn't struggle. She sits rigid, her back rammed straight, staring into the darkness ahead. You watch it all from inside the cottage, frozen in a state of surreal horror. It's like watching a nightmare unfold while you are wide awake, your feet nailed to the floor. This is a moment that defies belief, yet it is happening. The sheer, mundane reality of it is the most shocking part. The man adjusts his grip, the horse shifts its weight, and your wife is being carried away like a sack of grain. There is a distinct historical uncertainty about how this was carried out. Would she have been forced to walk thrown over a saddle laid with a rope? The chronicles are silent on such humiliating details, written by men for whom a peasant bride's experience was of no consequence. The specifics were likely left to the whims of the men sent to do the job. The horses turn, their hoofs churning the mud by your doorstep. And then, they begin to move, slowly at first, then picking up to a steady trot, heading up the path that leads out of the village and towards the dark, waiting shape of the castle on the hill. You watch until they are just silhouettes, until the sound of their hoofbeats fades into the night. You are still looking at the empty doorway long after they are gone. The space where the horses stood is now just an empty patch of darkness. The night air, suddenly cold, flows into the cottage, carrying the scent of damp earth and the faint, unsettling smell of horse. For a long moment, no one moves. The tableau inside the hut is frozen. Your friends and family are statues of shared grief. The only sound is the crackle of the fire in the hearth and the choke, rhythmic sobbing of Ilaria's mother. Then, slowly, the spell breaks. Someone shuffles their feet. Another person clears their throat. The illusion of a wedding celebration is shattered beyond repair. The forced smiles and hollow cheerfulness are gone, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. The room, which felt so full of life just a short while ago, now feels like a tomb. Iloria's father, a man you have only ever seen as stoic and strong, walks to the table and slams his fist down. The wooden plates and mugs jump. It's not a loud, theatrical bang, but a short, sharp crack of contained rage and utter despair. He doesn't say a word. He just turns, his face a mask of stone, and walks out of the cottage into the night. His departure is a signal. The performance is over. The guests, your friends and neighbors, begin to leave. They don't say goodbye. They don't offer condolences. What could they say? I'm sorry, your wife was just abducted by the Lord's men. There are no words for this. They file out one by one, their heads bowed, their eyes avoiding yours. Each person that passes you is another small twist of the knife. You see the pity in their faces, and it feels like acid. You see their shame, their shared impotence, and it only magnifies your own. They are escaping back to their own homes, to the relative safety of their own families. They are leaving you alone in the wreckage. Elara's mother is the last to leave. She stops in front of you, her face ravaged by tears. She reaches out and touches your arm, her hand trembling. Survive this, she whispers, her voice raspy. Both of you. Survive. Then she too is gone, leaving you and her daughter's empty chair. You are left alone in your wedding cottage. The silence that descends is not a peaceful one. It's a loud, roaring silence that fills your head. The room is a disaster. The table is littered with the remnants of the feast. A half-eaten piece of chicken lies on a wooden platter, its skin congealed and greasy. Mugs of ale are left half full. A trail of mud from the guests' boots marks the floor. It looks like the aftermath of a great battle, and in a way, it is. You stare at the table, the food, which was meant to symbolize community and celebration, now seems like a mockery, a feast for a ghost. You feel a wave of nausea. The thought of eating, of swallowing anything, is repulsive. Your eyes drift to the chair beside you. The Laura's chair. It's empty. A few minutes ago, she was sitting there, a warm, living presence. Now, it's just a piece of wood, an absence so profound it feels like a physical entity in the room. You can almost see the shape of her sitting there, a shimmering outline of what should have been. The scene, a groom left alone amidst the ruins of his wedding feast, is a powerful image, that one rarely recorded. History is written about the powerful, about the lord in his castle. The emotional landscape of a peasant's grief was considered beneath notice, and yet, this silent, solitary moment is the true heart of the custom's cruelty. The psychological torment of the one left behind is a form of violence in itself, a deliberate stripping away of a man's dignity in his own home. On his most important day, there's a debate among social historians about whether this public humiliation of the husband was not, in fact, a more significant goal of the practice than the assault on the wife. Slowly, you begin to move. You walk through the room like a stranger, a ghost in your own home. You pick up a fallen mug. You straighten a stool that was knocked over. You do these small, meaningless tasks because the alternative is to stand still, and to stand still is to let the horror consume you. You reach the door and push it shut, dropping the heavy wooden bar into place. It makes a solid, definitive thud. You have barred the door to your wedding cottage. You are a husband. Your wife is somewhere else. And you are utterly, terrifyingly alone. The feast is over. The long, dark night has just begun. You bar the door, and the world shrinks to the four walls of your cottage. The sounds of the village, the distant dog bark. The murmur of voices are muffled, distant. Here, inside, there is only the roaring silence and the ghost of a feast. The fire in the hearth is burned down to glowing embers, casting long, dancing shadows that make the small room feel vast and menacing. You look around at this home you prepared with such care. For weeks, you worked until your muscles ached to make this place ready for her. You ray-thatched a leaking section of the roof, painstakingly weaving the straw together. You carved a new stool so you would have a matching pair. You even traded a day's labor with the potter's son for a small, glazed jug that you thought Ilara would like for keeping milk cool. Every corner of this hut holds an echo of your hope. Now, it all feels like a cruel joke. The bed, which you stuffed with fresh, sweet-smelling straw this very morning, is the worst part. It is in the corner. A promise of intimacy, of shared warmth, of the beginning of a life together. It was meant to be the heart of your new home, the place where you would create a family. Tonight, it is a monument to your failure. You can't even look at it. It feels like it's mocking you. You walk over to the small, unglazed window. You push open the wooden shutter. The night is dark, the moon hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds. The air is cold on your face. You can see the faint lights of a few other cottages, small sparks of life in the oppressive darkness. And beyond them, up on the hill, there is nothing. The castle is a black hole against the slightly less black sky, a void that has swallowed your wife. You think of Alara. You try to picture her. But your mind rebels. You don't want to imagine where she is, who she is with, what is happening to her within those cold stone walls. The thought is a physical pain, a hot poker twisting in your gut. This place, this single room, was supposed to be your sanctuary. A peasant's life is lived in public. You work in the fields with everyone. You go to church with everyone. Your business is everyone's business. The home is the only place of privacy. The only place where a man can be a husband and a father. The king of his own tiny, mad-world castle. But that sanctuary has been violated before it was even truly formed. The Lord has reached into your home and asserted his dominance in the most intimate way possible. There is a concept some legal historians discuss called hamsocn, an old Anglo-Saxon term that means home-seeking or, more accurately, housebreaking. It was considered one of the most severe crimes, the invasion of a person's home. The idea was that a person's dwelling was a sacred space, an extension of themselves, and to breach it was a grave offense against both the individual and the community's peace. But this law, like all laws, did not apply to the Lord. He could break into your home, your life, your marriage, with impunity. The very power structure was built on his exemption from the rules that bound everyone else. You turn from the window and your eyes fall upon the small wooden chest at the foot of your bed. It contains your few meager possessions. On top of it sits a small, clumsily carved wooden bird. You made it for Alara when you were both just teenagers. You'd spent a week on it, secretly whittling away at a piece of scrap wood with your knife until your fingers were raw. It wasn't very good. The wings were uneven, and the head was too big, but when you gave it to her, she had smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile, and you knew in that moment that you loved her. She had kept it ever since. She brought it here this afternoon, placing it on the chest herself. So a part of you is always here, she'd said. You pick up the bird. The wood is smooth and cool in your hand. You run your thumb over its lopsided wings. You hold this small, stupid bird, and it's the only thing in the entire world that feels real. It's a tangible piece of your shared past, a past before the shadow of the Lord fell over you. It's a memory of a simpler love, a purer time. You clutch the bird so tightly in your fist that its uneven edges dig into your palm. You sink down onto one of the stools, your back to the bed. You sit in the dark, in the ruins of your wedding celebration, in a house that doesn't feel like a home. You sit and you stare into the dying embers of the fire, holding a little wooden bird, and you wait. The night stretches before you, an endless, black ocean of time to be endured, second by agonizing second. You sit on the stool, the wooden bird still clenched in your fist, as the embers in the hearth slowly fade from a dull orange glow to a soft, ashen grey. The cottage grows colder, the silence deepens, but it's not quiet inside your head. In the blackness of the night, with nothing to distract you, your mind becomes your own personal torture chamber. You try not to think about it. You try to empty your head, to focus on the grain of the wood on the table, the feel of the cold air on your skin. You try to recite the Lord's Prayer, but the words get jumbled and lost. You try to count, but you lose your place after 20. Your mind, untethered, keeps snapping back to the one thing you are desperate to avoid: the castle. And the imaginesses begin. They are phantoms, conjured from a terrifying blend of ignorance and fear. You've never been inside the castle's keep, so your mind furnishes it with details gleaned from tavern tales and your own anxieties. You see vast, echoing stone corridors, slick with damp, Torches sputter in iron sconces on the walls, their light casting huge, monstrous shadows that writhe and twist like demons. The air smells of wine and roasting meat, an aroma of luxury that is, for you, the scent of dread. You picture her walking down one of those corridors, her small, blue-clad figure dwarfed by the immense, oppressive stone. The reeve's hand is on her arm, pulling her along. Her face is a pale, blank mask. Then the scene shifts. You see the Lord. He is not the distant figure you've seen on horseback. In your mind, he is a giant, a leering beast from a dark fairy tale. He sits in a high-backed chair, a goblet of wine in his hand, a cruel smile on his lips. He looks her up and down, a butcher appraising a piece of meat. You try to wrench your thoughts away, to stop the scene from playing out. You stand up and start pacing the small cottage. 3 steps one way, 3 steps back. You feel like a caged animal, but the images follow you, projected onto the dark canvas of your eyelids. You see a bed larger than any you could ever imagine, draped in heavy, dark fabrics. You see her standing beside it, her hands clasped in front of her, her head bowed. The wild flowers are gone from her hair. Her simple wool dress looks coarse and out of place against the richness of the room. Your breath catches in your throat, very hot. Choking rage mixes with a cold, sickening fear. Your powerlessness is a physical thing, a weight pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. You are here, in this hut, while the most intimate part of your life, the foundation of your marriage, is being desecrated miles away, and there is nothing you can do. You stop pacing and press your forehead against the cold, rough wood of the cottage wall. You squeeze your eyes shut, but it doesn't help. The phantoms are inside your head. This psychological torment is an aspect of such power dynamics that is impossible for historical records to capture. Chronicles might record a lord's decree or a battle one, but they cannot record the nightmares of a peasant groom. Yet, this violence of the imagination is a profound part of the suffering. Some modern psychological historians, looking back at periods of intense oppression, argue that the fear and anxiety created by the threat of violence can be as damaging and controlling as the violence itself. The uncertainty, the waiting, the forced imagining of a loved one suffering, this is a deliberate to love terror. It ensures the subjugation continues long after the physical act is over. The Lord doesn't just own your labor, he has colonized your mind. You push yourself off the wall and stumble towards the water bucket. You plunge your hands into the icy water, the shock a welcome distraction. You splash the water on your face, gasping. For a moment, the cold clarity helps. The images recede. But the relief is temporary. As soon as you step away from the bucket, the silence rushes back in. And with it, the phantoms. They are more insidious now. They are no longer just images, but sounds. You imagine a door closing, a low murmur of voices, a woman's sob. Is it your imagination? Or is it the wind? Is it a phantom? Or is it a memory of Elara's mother, replaying itself in your head? You can't tell. The lines between reality and nightmare blur. You realize you are trembling. A deep, uncontrollable shudder that starts in your core and radiates out to your limbs. You wrap your arms around yourself, but it doesn't help. The cold isn't coming from the outside. It's coming from the images in your head, from the black pit of fear and rage that has opened up inside you. You are a prisoner in your own home, in your own mind, haunted by ghosts of things that may or may not be happening, but whose possibility is enough to destroy you. In the suffocating darkness of your heart, hunched over and trembling, you start to think beyond the immediate horror. The initial shock and the storm of imagined phantoms begin to recede, replaced by a colder, sharper question that circles in your mind like a vulture. Why? Not why me, that question is pointless. It could be any man in the village. But why does this right exist at all? What is the nature of this power that can shatter a life with such casual, thoughtless cruelty? You've grown up accepting the order of things, just as you accept that the sun rises and the seasons turn. The world is divided into those who rule and those who are ruled. There are those who fight, those who pray, and those who work. You are of the third group, the foundation upon which everything else is built. You have always known this. Your father knew it, and his father before him. Your lot is to toil, to obey, and to endure. But tonight, that passive acceptance is fractured. The abstract concept of the Lord's power has become a concrete, personal violation, and you are desperate to understand it. Is it law, you try to think? You've heard of the Lord's court, where disputes over land or stolen livestock are settled. You know there are rules, edicts read out by the reeve in the village square. But has anyone ever heard a rule read out that says, "The Lord shall have the first night of every bride"? No, it's never spoken of in those terms. It's a custom, a tradition, something that is done because it has always been done. It exists in a grey area, a space between written law and brute force, and that's what makes it so insidious. It has the weight of law without ever having to be defended or justified as one. This is a point that has fascinated legal historians for centuries. The search for a specific, written statute codifying the droit dus ague new in the legal codes of medieval Europe has been largely fruitless. There are very few, if any, unambiguous legal documents that state it as a formal right. This has led many to conclude it was never a law in the sense we understand it today. Instead, the debate continues: was it a widely accepted customary right, an unwritten rule understood by all, or was it simply a pattern of abuse, a recurring crime committed by powerful men who knew they were above the law and would face no consequences? The truth is likely messy, varying greatly from region to region and lord to lord. You push the thought of law aside. If it's not law, then what is it? Is it just power, the simple, brutal fact that he can, and so he does, like a wolf taking a lamb from the flock? There is no right or wrong in the wolf's mind, only hunger and opportunity. The Lord is strong, and you are weak. It's the oldest story in the world. But it feels like more than that. The reeve's sarcastic words, the impossible redemption fee, that wasn't just a wolf taking a lamb. That was calculated. It was psychological. It was designed to be a performance of dominance. It wasn't just about taking a Lara, it was about reminding you, and everyone else in the village, of your place. It was a lesson. It was a way of grinding your face into the dirt and making you thank him for the privilege. This kind of power is intoxicating. It's not just about wealth or land. It's about the ability to control lives, to bend people to your will, to interfere in the most sacred and personal parts of their existence. It's a power that reinforces itself. The more he demonstrates it, the more powerful he becomes, because the more fear he instills. You think of the castle on the hill. It's not just a fortress of stone, it's a fortress of belief. Everyone in the valley believes in the Lord's power. That collective belief is stronger than any wall, more formidable than any army. To challenge him would be to challenge the very structure of the world as you know it. It would be like trying to push over a mountain with your bare hands. And you are part of that belief. By standing by, by doing nothing, you have participated in the ritual. You have consented to your own humiliation. The shame of this realization is a fresh wave of sickness. Your inaction has reinforced his power. You hate him, but you also, in a strange and terrible way, have helped him. You are trapped in a web, and the Lord is the spider at its center. But the strands of the web aren't made of silk. They are made of tradition, of fear, of economic necessity, and of your own forced compliance. It's a power so complete, so all-encompassing, that it feels like a law of nature. But it isn't. You know, in a deep, newly awakened part of your soul, that it is not natural for one man to have this kind of power over another. It is a monstrous fiction, but knowing it is a fiction and being able to tear it down are two very different things. For now, all you can do is sit in the dark and understand the precise and terrible shape of your cage. The night wears on, a slow, viscous river of darkness. Every sound from outside is magnified: the hoot of an owl, the rustle of a pig in its sty, the distant cry of a fox, Each noise makes you jump. Your senses roam screaming. You've given up trying to sit still. You pace the confines of your cottage, a caged animal wearing a groove in the packed earth floor. You doze for a few minutes at a time, slumped on the stool, your head in your hands, only to be jerked awake by a fresh wave of anxiety or a phantom sound. The blackness outside the window begins to soften. It's not dawn yet, but a pre-dawn. A subtle shift from pitch black to a deep, bruised purple. It's the coldest, quietest part of the night. The hour when the world seems to hold its breath. And for you, it is the hour of maximum dread. Because she will be coming back soon. All night, your fear has been focused on what was happening at the castle. It was a horror of the imagination, distant and unseen. But now, the fear changes its shape. It becomes a fear of the known, of the imminent, a fear of what you are about to see. What will she look like? Will she be crying? Will she be injured? Will her beautiful blue dress beat on? The questions swarm in your mind, each one more painful than the last. How will she walk? Will she be able to look at you? Will she speak? You find yourself standing by the door, your hand hovering over the heavy wooden bar. You should open it. You should be waiting for her outside. But you are paralyzed. You are terrified of the person you will see walking down that path. Will she be the same Elara who left? How can she be a part of her? A part of you both was destroyed tonight. You are about to meet the ghost of your wife. You feel a surge of shame at your own fear. You should be thinking of her pain, of what she has endured. But you can't help it. Your fear is selfish. You are afraid of how hurt Roma will change your life, your home. You are afraid of the silence that will now live between you. How do you talk about the unspeakable? How do you comfort someone when you are the living symbol of the failure to protect them? Every time she looks at you, she will be reminded of your helplessness. Every time you look at her, you will be reminded of the Lord's violation. The shadow of the castle will lie not just over your fields, but in your bed, at your table, for the rest of your lives. Some medieval accounts, though rare and often written with a clerical bias, touch upon the aftermath of such violations. They speak of marriages that crumble, of women cast out by shamed husbands, or of women who simply waste away from grief. The social fabric was not equipped to handle this kind of trauma. There was no language for it, no ritual for healing. The assumption was that a woman's value was intrinsically tied to her purity, and once that was taken, she was damaged goods. Historians continue to debate how universally this belief was held among the peasant classes, where survival often took precedence over abstract concepts of honor. Was the bond of a working partnership stronger than the stain of shame for you? In this moment, the question is terrifyingly real. You force yourself to move. You slide the bar back. The sound is loud and grating in the stillness. You pull the heavy door inward. The air that greets you is bitingly cold and wet with dew. The eastern sky is beginning to glow with a faint, pearlescent light. The shapes of the other cottages are emerging from the darkness, their thatched roofs silvered with frost. The world is being reborn, washed clean by the coming dawn. But you feel filthy. You step outside, your boots scrunching on the cold ground. You stand in the middle of the lane, a solitary figure in the grey twilight. You wrap your arms around yourself against the chill, but the cold is inside you. You stare up the path that leads towards the castle, the path she was taken down hours ago. It's empty. And so you wait. You stand there, in the freezing pre-dawn, and you stare at that empty road. Every minute stretches into an eternity. The sky gets brighter, the purple bleeding into a soft, pale pink. Birds begin to stir, their first hesitant chirps cutting through the silence. The village is still asleep. It feels like you are the only person awake in the world. You are waiting for your marriage to begin. You are waiting for the rest of your life to start. And you have never been more afraid. A flicker of movement at the top of the path. Your heart lurches into your throat. You strain your eyes, peering into the half-light. At first, it's just a shape. a smudge of color against the gray backdrop of the fields. But it moves. It's coming closer. It's a person, walking slowly, unsteadily. It's her. She's alone. The Lord's men didn't even bother to escort her back. They just turned her out of the castle gates at dawn, left to make her own way home like a stray dog. The indignity of it is a fresh splash of acid on an open wound. As she gets closer, your breath catches, your worst fears, the phantoms that haunted you all night, feel pale and inadequate compared to the reality of her. She is walking with a strange, stiff gait, as if every step is a painful effort. Her beautiful blue dress is stained with mud at the hem and something darker on the sleeve that you don't want to identify. It hangs on her differently now, no longer a vibrant garment of celebration, but a soiled costume from a tragedy. The wildflowers in her hair are gone, save for one or two wilted petals clinging stubbornly to a braid. But it's her face that stops your heart. It's a mask of chalky white. Her eyes, which are usually so full of life and light, are hollowed out, dark pools of nothing. They are fixed on the ground a few feet in front of her, as if she cannot bear to look up at the world. She seems to have shrunk, to have collapsed in on herself. The vibrant, strong Ella you married yesterday is gone. In her place is this shell, eye-walking ghost. You take a step toward her, then stop. You don't know what to do. Do you run to her? Do you embrace her? Would your touch be a comfort? Or would it make her recoil? You are frozen by a new kind of helplessness. She doesn't seem to see you at first. She just keeps walking, one foot in front of the other, a slow, mechanical rhythm of endurance. She's only a dozen yards away now. You can see the faint tremor in her hands, the way her shoulders are hunched as if warding off a blow. Then, her eyes lift. They meet yours. There is no recognition in them for a second. It's like she is looking straight through you. Then, a flicker, a tiny spark of something. But it's not relief. It's not love. It's a wave of pure, undiluted pain. Her mask of composure cracks. Her lower lip begins to tremble. A single tear traces a path down her dust-smeared cheek. And then she looks away, her gaze dropping back to the dirt path. She continues walking past you, towards the open door of your cottage, as if you are a stranger, a tree, a part of the landscape. She doesn't say your name. She doesn't reach for you. She just walks past. The rejection is a physical blow. It knocks the air from your lungs. You had prepared yourself for tears, for anger, for a complete breakdown. You had not prepared for this nothingness, this void. She steps through the doorway into the dim interior of the hut. You stand outside in the growing light, the cold morning air on your face, feeling more alone than you did when the cottage was empty. This moment, the return of the bride, is a gaping hole in the historical narrative. Chroniclers and balladeresses were interested in the drama of the taking, not the quiet, devastating sorrow of the returning. The psychological state of a peasant woman after such an ordeal was of no interest to the men who wrote history. Was there a customary silence? Were there rituals of cleansing? Modern historians can only speculate, drawing parallels from studies of trauma in other contexts. The concept of soul loss or a shattered self, used by anthropologists to describe the psychological state of individuals after extreme trauma in some cultures, might be the closest we can get to understanding Elara's state. Her spirit has, in a way, been left behind in the castle. You finally force your legs to move. You turn and follow her inside, your heart a leaden weight in your chest. She is standing in the middle of the room, exactly where you stood when you felt so alone last night. She is looking at the messy table, the remnants of the feast. She doesn't seem to see it. She is just there, a statue of misery. You close the door behind you, and the cottage is plunged back into gloom. Elara, you whisper. Her name sounds fragile, breakable. She doesn't respond. She doesn't even flinch. It's like she's not in the room at all. She's still up on that hill, in a cold stone room, and only her body has come home. You have your wife back, but you have lost her completely. The silence in the cottage is no longer empty, it's thick and heavy, like a shroud. It's filled with everything you cannot say, everything she cannot feel. You stand by the door, and she stands in the center of the room, and the few feet of space between you might as well be an ocean. You want to bridge that gap. You need to. You take a slow, hesitant step towards her. The floorboards creak. The sound seems to echo in the stillness. She flinches. It's a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, a slight tightening of her shoulders, but it stops you dead in your tracks. Your presence, your movement, has startled her. Yo, her husband. You are a threat. The realization is a cold, sharp knife in your gut. Her body, her instincts, now associate a man's presence with danger, and you are a man. Delara, you say again, your voice barely a whisper. It's me. This time, she turns her head slowly, looking at you, but her eyes are still distant, unfocused. She's looking at your form, but not at you. I'm tired, she says. Her voice is a dry rustle, a sound you don't recognize. It has no tone, no emotion. It's the voice of someone who has been hollowed out. She walks towards the bed you held and bared to look at all night. She doesn't pull back the blankets. She just lies down on top of the rough wool, still in her soiled blue dress. She curls onto her side, her back to you, pulling her knees up to her chest. A small, tight ball of misery. And that's it. There are no tears, no screams, no accusations, just this devastating, empty silence. You stand there, watching her, your heart breaking with every breath she takes. What do? Do you go to her? Touch her shoulder. Try to comfort her, but the memory of her flinch holds you back. Your touch might be poison to her right now. Do you speak? What words exist for this? I'm sorry, I love you. They feel like feeble, meaningless sounds in the face of such a colossal trauma. So you do nothing. You simply stand and watch her back rise and fall with each shallow breath. An invisible wall has been erected between you. It's made of her pain, your shame, and the unspoken horror of the night. You both know what happened, but to speak of it would be to make it more real, to give it a name and a shape, and neither of you has the strength for that. This silence is a phenomenon that historians and sociologists of trauma recognize. Often, after a profound violation, language fails. The experience is so far outside the normal bounds of life that words cannot contain it. To speak of it is to relive it. Silence becomes a shield, a way to survive. The debate among historians is whether this silence in a medieval context was purely a psychological defense, or if it was also a social mandate. Was there a cultural expectation of silence? Did the community, for its own peace of mind, prefer not to speak of these things, effectively enforcing a collective amnesia? The answer is likely both. The trauma was personal, but the silence was communal. You move as quietly as you can to the other side of the room. You start to clean up the wreckage of the feast. You pick up the cold, greasy chicken, unwrap it in a cloth. You gather the dirty mugs. You wipe down the table. You perform these mundane tasks with a slow, deliberate focus. Each small act of order is an act of defiance against the chaos that has invaded your life. It's the only thing you can control. You work in silence for what feels like hours. The light outside the shuttered window grows stronger. You can hear the village waking up, a rooster crowing, the sound of an axe splitting wood, the lowing of a cow. The world is moving on. The day is beginning. A normal day for everyone else. But in your cottage, time has stopped. You glance over at the bed. Delara hasn't moved. She lies perfectly still, a statue of grief. Is she sleeping, or is she just gone lost in the labyrinth of her own mind? You realize that this is your marriage now, not the shared hopes and dreams of yesterday, but this careful, silent dance around a wound so deep it may never heal. The Lord is not in the room, but His presence is everywhere. He is in her stillness, in your fear, in the terrible, yawning silence between you. He took one night, but he has stolen every night that is to come. The unspoken trauma is a third person in your marriage, a permanent, silent guest in your home. You don't know how long you both remain in that state of suspended animation, her, a motionless form on the bed. You and you, a silent caretaker of a broken home. But, eventually, a new kind of dread begins to creep in. The sun is high now. You have to go out. Life in the village does not pause for personal tragedy. The Lord's Reeve will be expecting you in the fields. The animals need to be tended. The rhythm of survival is relentless. To stay hidden in your cottage would be an admission of shame. An invitation for more scrutiny, more whispers. You must face them. You must perform the next act in this miserable play the morning after. You walk over to the bed, your heart pounding. You stand over her for a moment, looking down at her curled form. Belora, you say softly, we have to. The sun is up. She stirs, but doesn't UNCURL. After a long moment, she slowly, stiffly, sits up. Her back is still to you. She doesn't look at you as she swings her legs over the side of the bed. Her movements are slow, robotic. She smooths down her soiled dress, a futile gesture. You hold out a small bowl of water you've set aside. Here, you say. She takes it without a word, her fingers brushing yours. Her skin is cold as ice. She dips her fingers in the water and dabs at her face, but it does little to wash away the pallor of exhaustion and grief. You know you have to open the door. It feels like the hardest thing you've ever had to do. Taking a deep breath, you walk over, lift the bar, and pull it open. Sunlight, bright and accusatory, floods the dim cottage. You both flinch from its intensity, and with the light comes the sounds, the smells, the undeniable presence of the village. It's waiting for you. You step out first. Alara follows a moment later, the shadow at your back. The world outside seems obscenely normal. Children are chasing a stray dog down the lane. Old man Hemlock is grumbling at his donkey, just as he was yesterday. The baker's wife is sweeping her doorstep. But, as you emerge, a change ripples through the scene. The children's game falters. The baker's wife stops sweeping, her eyes fixed on you. A sudden, unnatural quiet falls over your small corner of the world. Every villager who sees you stops what they are doing, and they stare. It's a different kind of staring than yesterday. Yesterday's was a gaze of pity and morbid curiosity. Today's gaze is more complex. It's an invasive, probing stare, hungry for details. They're looking for the story. They scan Alara from head to toe, looking for signs of what happened. They look at you, searching your face for clues about your state of mind. Are you angry, broken, resigned? Their gazes are like needles, pricking at your skin. You feel exposed, dissected. You are no longer just you, or a newly married man. You are a public spectacle, the village's shame, the village's drama, embodied. An interesting and often overlooked aspect of peasant life was its radical lack of privacy. In a world of shared spaces, open doors, and communal labor, every owner's life was an open book. But this lack of privacy had a dual nature. It could be a source of strength and community support, but it could also be a source of immense social pressure and judgment. There was no escaping the collective gaze. Historians who study the social dynamics of small, pre-modern communities often debate whether this intense public scrutiny was a force for social cohesion or a tool of oppressive conformity. In your case, it feels like a tribunal. You want to shout at them. What are you looking at? Go back to your own lives. But you can't. You just set your jaw, stare straight ahead, and start walking towards the fields. Alara walks a few steps behind you, not beside you. There's a wife word, but behind you, like a servant or a prisoner. The small distance between you is a chasm that everyone can see. It's a public declaration of the fracture in your marriage. You pass a group of men mending a fence. They fall silent as you approach. Their eyes follow you. You can feel their judgment. They're pretty. And something else, a hint of contempt. Is it because you failed to protect her, because you stood by and did nothing? You are a living reminder of their own impotence. And perhaps they hate you for it. Hey, woman, seeing Ilara, makes a quick sign against evil, as if her trauma might be contagious. The small gesture is a devastating blow. They are not just looking at Ilara as a victim, they are looking at her as something tainted, unclean. You keep walking. Your back straight. Your face a mask of stone. Ilara keeps following. Her eyes on the ground. You are a silent, two-person funeral procession. You are walking through your village. Your home. But you have never felt more like outsiders. The community has not wrapped its arms around you in comfort. It has, instead, drawn a circle around you, setting you apart as objects of gossip and cautionary tales. The second day is, in some ways, harder than the first. The physical ordeal may be over for her, but the social ordeal has just begun. You spend the day in the fields, lost in the familiar, back-breaking rhythm of labor. You work with a savage intensity, pouring all your rage and grief into the soil. You swing your hoe. You pull weeds. You haul rocks, until your muscles scream and sweat drips into your eyes, blurring your vision. The physical pain is a welcome distraction from the emotional agony. You work side by side with the other men of the village, but no one speaks to you. They give you a wide berth, leaving you in a small pocket of silence. Ilara works in a different field with the women, reading on gathering herbs. You catch glimpses of her throughout the day. A flash of her blue dress at the far end of a row of beans. You see the other women talking to her. Their heads close together. Are they offering comfort or are they praying? Trying to extract the story from her from this distance. You can't tell. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the land, you start the weary walk home. Your body aches, but your mind is a little clearer. The sharp edges of the horror dulled by exhaustion. It's on this walk, trailing behind a cart filled with firewood, that you overhear a conversation. It's two of the village elders, Old Man Hemlock and a weary farmer named Thomas. They think you are out of earshot, and their voices are low and gravelly. "Bay bad business," Hemlock mutters, shaking his head. "Bay bad business. The lad will be changed by it." "Aye," Thomas roasts. "But tell me this, Hemlock, did you ever know a lord to actually do it in your father's time?" "Even," Hemlock spits a stream of brown tobacco juice onto the path. "In my father's time, the old lord was a terror, but even he took the fee. Always. A foot pig, a barrel of ale. He liked the fear of it more than the act, I reckon. Made men feel small without him having to dirty his own sheets." Thomas nods slowly. "It's what I've always heard. A threat. A way to show who's master. This new lord, he's different. He doesn't understand the old ways. Or maybe he understands them too well." You freeze, hiding behind the cart. Your heart hammering against your ribs. What are they saying? Hemlock continues, his voice even lower. "The priest, Father Michael, he told my brother once. He said the whole droit do seigneur. It's mostly a story. He said the scholars and the bishops, they can't find any real law for it. He called it a vulgar myth. Something the nobles let us believe because it keeps us scared. A dog that barks loud doesn't have to bite. See? A vulgar myth. The words echo in your head. A story. A threat. A wave of confusion so profound it makes you dizzy washes over you. All your life, you believed in this right as if it were a law of nature, as fundamental as rain and sun. You accepted it. The entire village accepted it. Your terror, your shame, your wife's ordeal, was it all based on a lie, a ghost story told to keep peasants in line? This is the central, maddening paradox that modern historians grapple with. The right of the first night exists in a bizarre state of being both historically unverifiable and culturally undeniable. As the old men suggest, the search for explicit legal proof is mostly a dead end. This has led a significant portion of the academic world to label it as a myth, a piece of anti-feudal propaganda that gained traction in later centuries. And yet, the belief in the right was undeniably real and pervasive. So the question that historians are still fiercely debating is this: does it matter if it was a legal right or not? If lords acted as if it were and peasants believed it was, if the threat is powerful enough to produce the same outcome of terror and submission, is it not, for all practical purposes, real? The implications of what you've overheard are staggering. If the old men are right, then the lord's action wasn't the exercising of a traditional right. It was simply a brutal act of violence, a crime. He didn't do it because it was his due, he did it because he could, and because he knew you all believed he had the right to. He exploited your fear, your ignorance. The thought doesn't make you feel better. In fact, it makes you feel worse. It's one thing to be a victim of an ancient, unchangeable tradition. It's another thing entirely to be the victim of a con, a cruel trick. It makes your powerlessness feel even more pathetic. You work out not by a law, but by a story. You stumble away from the cart, your mind reading. You don't know what to believe. Was your suffering part of an ancient order? Or was it just a meaningless, random act of cruelty? Is it better to be a cog in a terrible machine, or a fly swatted by a careless hand? You look toward your cottage. Dilara is already there, a thin trail of smoke rising from the chimney. She is inside, waiting. And this new, terrible uncertainty is another ghost that you have to bring home with you, another unspoken question to add to the suffocating silence. The days bleed into weeks. A new, fragile routine takes root in the silence of your cottage. You wake. You work. You eat. You sleep. You move around each other with a careful, deliberate choreography, like two strangers forced to share a small room. The invisible wall between you remains. Sometimes, you catch her looking at you with an expression you can't decipher. Is it awe or resentment, or is it just emptiness you don't ask? The unspoken rule is to never, ever speak of that night. You try to be kind. You leave a wildflower you found by the well on the table for her. You take on her share of the heavier chores without being asked. Small, silent gestures of care. Sometimes she seems to notice, a brief softening in her eyes. Other times, she doesn't react at all, lost in a world of her own. Life continues. The harvest comes, and the village is consumed by the frantic work of bringing in the grain. For a while, the shared, exhaustive labor almost makes things feel normal. You laugh with the other men as you share a water skin. You see Elara talking with the women as they bind the sheaves. A faint echo of her old self. A sliver of hope begins to grow in your chest. Maybe time can heal this. Maybe, with enough sunrises, the ghost can be banished. But then, one evening, the fragile peace shatters. It's been nearly 2 months since the wedding. Yuri sitting by the hearth, mending a leather strap, while Elara grinds grain with a small hand quern. The rhythmic, scraping sound is a familiar part of your evening quiet. Suddenly, the sound stops. You look up. Elara is standing perfectly still, her hand on the quern, her face pale. She sways slightly and puts a hand to her stomach. A look of dawning horror spreads across her features. What is it, you ask? Your own stomach clenching in sudden fear. She doesn't answer. She just looks at you, her eyes wide with the terror you haven't seen since that morning she returned from the castle. And then you know. The unspoken fear. The question that has been lurking in the deepest, darkest corner of your mind ever since that night. The possibility you have both been desperately, silently praying against. Her body, which has been a source of shame and distance, has now become a vessel for a new kind of horror. Is she, with child? The thought is a physical blow. You feel the air leave your lungs. You stare at her hand on her belly. All the progress you thought you'd made, all the fragile scar tissue you thought was forming over the wound, is ripped away in an instant. If she is pregnant, then the Lord's violation is not a memory. It's a living, growing thing that will be a part of your lives forever. How could you raise that child? How could you look at it every day and not be reminded of its origin? How could you love a living symbol of your wife's trauma and your own humiliation? And what would the village say? The whispers would start again. The counting of months on fingers. The sideways glances. The child would be marked, an outcast from birth. The Lord's bastard raised in a peasant's hut. This was, perhaps, the ultimate expression of the Lord's power. It wasn't just about claiming a single night, it was about the potential to contaminate a bloodline, to insert his legacy into the very heart of a family. The historical record is mostly silent on the fate of such children, but it's a recurring theme in folklore and literature from the period. These stories often end in tragedy: the child abandoned, the mother cast out. The very existence of such a child would be a constant public reminder of the Lord's dominance and the husband's failure. The debate over whether droit du seigneur was real often overlooks this crucial biological consequence. A single act of assault could have consequences that lasted for generations. I knew. Poisonous thought enters your mind. You and Delara. You have not been together as husband and wife. Not once. You have slept in the same bed. But a yard of cold, empty space has separated you every night. So she is with child. There is no doubt. It cannot be yours. You look at her face, and you see the same terrible calculation in her eyes. She knows. And she knows that you know. The seed of doubt isn't a seed anymore. It's a poison tree, and its branches are wrapping around your heart, squeezing the life out of it. The fragile trust you were trying to rebuild, the quiet companionship, it all evaporates in the face of this biological certainty. You have a choice. You can turn on her, accuse her, cast her out. You can give in to the rage and shame and destroy what little is left of your life together. Or you can face this new horror together. She is still looking at you, her eyes pleading. She is not just afraid of the child, she's afraid of you. She's waiting to see what kind of man you will be. Will you be the man the village expects? The shamed husband who rejects the tainted wife? Or will you be the man you promised to be at the altar? For better or for worse, in sickness and in health. The silence in the room is absolute. In this moment, the fate of your marriage, your future, your very soul, hangs in the balance. The silence in the cottage stretches, thin and taut. You look at Ilaria's terrified face, at her hand on her stomach, and a storm rages inside you. One part of you, a primal, wounded part, wants to scream. It wants to break something. It wants to lash out at her, at the world, at the injustice of it all. It's the voice of shame, the voice of the village, the voice that says you are being made a fool of. But another part of you, a deeper, quieter part, sees only her. You see the woman you love, trapped in a nightmare that is not of her making. You see her terror, and you realize it is not just for herself, but for you, for what this will do to you, to us. In that moment, the storm inside you breaks, but it's not the rage that wins. It's a sudden, clarifying surge of anger, but it's a different kind of anger. It's not directed at her, it's a cold, pure, focused rage, and it is aimed squarely at the man in the castle. He will not take this, too. He took her first night. He took your honor. He planted this horror in your lives. He will not take your future. He will not turn you against each other. You stand up. You walk over to the corner of the room where your few tools are kept. Your hands close around the handle of your wood axe. For a wild, insane moment, you picture yourself walking up to the castle, axe in hand. A peasant revolt of war, a suicide mission. The image is satisfying, but you know it is a fool's dream. Open defiance is death. But the rage needs an outlet. It needs to become an action. If you cannot strike at the Lord himself, you can strike at what is his. You turn and walk to the door, your face set like stone. Elara watches you, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Where are you going? She whispers. I will be back, you say, your voice a low growl. You don't offer any other explanation. You can't. This is something you have to do alone. You step out into the moonless night. The air is crisp and cold. Instead of heading towards the village, you turn the other way, towards the dark, looming woods that border the Lord's estate. These woods are his property. Every tree, every rabbit, every bird is legally his. To hunt or forage here without permission poaching is a serious crime. The punishments are brutal: a flogging, a branding, having a hand cut off. You enter the tree line, and the darkness swallows you. The sounds of the village fade, replaced by the rustling of undergrowth and the sighing of the wind in the high branches. You move with a certainty you don't feel, fueled by pure adrenaline. You know these woods. As a boy, you played here. Despite the warnings, you know the paths, the clearings, the places where the game trails run. You walk for nearly half an hour, deeper and deeper into the Lord's domain. Finally, you find what you are looking for: a narrow trail used by deer, marked by their tracks in the soft earth. From your belt, you pull out a coil of rope and a small, wickedly sharp iron trap. It's a gin trap, with two serrated jaws that snap shut with brutal force. Owning such a device is, in itself, a crime for a peasant. You bought it months ago from a traveling tinker, trading a precious sack of dried beans for it. You told yourself it was for catching foxes that threatened your chickens, but, in your heart, you always knew what it was for. It was for this. For a moment just like this. Your hands are shaking, but you work with a grim purpose. You dig a shallow pit in the middle of the trail. You use your axe to cut a sapling, trimming it into a strong stake. You hammer the stake deep into the ground and tether the trap's chain to it. Then, with a grunt of effort, you use your body weight to pry open the powerful jaws of the trap, setting the delicate trigger mechanism. You carefully place the armed trap in the pit and cover it with a light layer of leaves and dirt, camouflaging it perfectly. It's a small act, a pathetic act. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a revolution, it's not vengeance. It is a secret, silent scream of defiance in the dark. You are stealing from him, not just the animal that will be caught in the trap, but you are stealing his security. You are introducing a small element of chaos, of danger, into his perfectly ordered world. You are taking back a tiny sliver of control. This form of social banditry, or everyday resistance, is a topic of great interest to historians who study peasant societies. They argue that for people with no official power, resistance often took these small-scale, clandestine forms: poaching, sabotage, foot trading, telling subversive stories. These acts were not aimed at overthrowing the system, which was impossible, but at surviving within it, at carving out a small space of autonomy and dignity. The debate continues on how effective this weapon of the weak truly was. Was it a genuine thorn in the side of the authorities, or just a way for peasants to let off steam that ultimately changed nothing? You stand back and look at your work. There's nothing to see but a patch of disturbed leaves on the forest floor. But you know what lies beneath. You have laid a trap. You have committed a crime. You have, in your own small, desperate way, fought back. You turn and head for home. The empty woods at your back. You don't feel victorious. You don't feel relieved. But you feel different. The helpless rage has been channeled into a single, sharp point. You have an anchor in the storm. It's not much, but it's something. It's a start. You have a secret now, a secret rebellion, and it's the first step toward reclaiming a part of yourself. You return to the cottage as silently as you left. The wooden bird you carved is still on the chest, a relic from another lifetime. Elara is sitting on a stool by the cold hearth, exactly where you left her. She looks up as you enter, her eyes searching your face, trying to understand the change she sees there. Your rage is no longer a wild, destructive storm it has cooled into something harder, quieter. You don't tell her where you've been or what you've done. That secret is yours alone, a small, dangerous flame you must shield from the wind. But your action in the woods has changed the air in the cottage. You broke the paralysis. You walk over to her and crouch down, so your eyes are level with hers. We will face this, you say, your voice low and steady. You and I, together, whatever comes. For the first time since that night, you reach out and take her hand. She doesn't pull away. Her fingers are cold, but she doesn't recoil. A single tear escapes her eye and rolls down her cheek. But this time, it's not a tear of pain or terror. It's something else. Relief, perhaps. The first crack in the ice. The next morning, you go with her to the edge of the village, to a small, isolated hut nestled near the woods. This is the home of old Meg, the village's healer, or herbwife. Meg is ancient, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes as bright and sharp as a bird's. The church is wary of women like her. They call their knowledge superstition. Their practice is witchcraft. Father Michael preaches against them from the pulpit. But when a child has a fever, or a cow is sick, or a wound refuses to heal, it is to Meg's or the villagers come, often under the cover of darkness. She holds the old knowledge, the wisdom of the earth that predates the stone church and the Lord's castle. The history of these folk healers, almost always women, is a fascinating and tragic one. They were the keepers of generations of empirical knowledge about herbal remedies, childbirth, and medicine. Yet, they existed in a precarious position, respected for their skills but also feared and suspected. In later centuries, this suspicion would curdle into outright persecution during the Great Witch Hunts. The debate among historians is whether these women were seen as a genuine threat to the established patriarchal order of the church and state, or if they were simply convenient scapegoats for a community's anxieties and misfortunes. You and Dilara stand at her threshold. The hut smells intensely of dried herbs, wood smoke, then damp earth. Bunches of plants hang from the rafters euro. Country, street, John's word. Meg looks from your tense face to Ilara's pale one. She doesn't need you to speak. She has seen this story before. She gestures you inside with a gnarled hand. She asks Ilara a few quiet questions, her voice surprisingly gentle. Ilara answers in monosyllables, her eyes fixed on the floor. Meg listens, nodding slowly. Then she turns to a collection of clay pots and wooden boxes, her long, bony fingers sorting through dried leaves and roots. She mixes a combination of herbs into a small cloth bag. You recognize the bitter scent of tansy and rue herbs you know from village lore are used to bring on a woman's courses. It's a dangerous, uncertain remedy. Meg hands the bag to Ilara. A strong tea, she says. Boil it tonight. Drink it all. Her sharp eyes then meet yours. The rest is in God's hands, or in the hands of the earth, whichever you pray to. But she doesn't just give you the herbs. She gives you something else. She looks at Ilara, not as a tainted object or a victim, but as a person. The body has its own wisdom. Meg says, her voice a little rasped. It remembers trauma, but it also knows how to heal. The forest floor is burned, but the seeds underneath wait. Be patient. Let the earth do its work. She is not just talking about the herbs. She is talking about something deeper. She is offering a different kind of narrative from the one of shame and sin offered by the church, or the one of property in violation offered by the Lord. She is offering a narrative of nature, of resilience, of survival. It's an ancient, feminine wisdom, passed down through generations of women who have endured. You leave a small offering, a handful of eggs you brought, and walk back to your cottage. Ilara clutches the small cloth bag in her hand. There is no guarantee the herbs will work. They might make her sick. They might do nothing. But the visit to Meg's hut has given you both something more than a potential cure. It has given you a sense of agency. You are no longer just passive victims of fate. You are taking action, seeking out a different kind of power. a knowledge that belongs to the common folk, not to the lords or priests. That night, as the fire burns low, you sit in silence while Alara drinks the bitter tea. It's a shared ritual, a desperate act of hope. You don't know what the morning will bring, but for the first time in a long time, you feel like you are in it together. Two seeds waiting patiently under a burnt forest floor. The bitter tea does its work. A few days after the visit to Old Meg's hut, a quiet, unspoken relief settles over your cottage. The immediate crisis has passed. The seed of doubt, that living embodiment of the Lord's violation, has been removed. It is a grim, sorrowful kind of victory. One you can never speak of to anyone, but it is a victory nonetheless. The shadow in your home has lightened, just a fraction. Alara remains quiet, but there's a subtle change. The hollowed-out look in her eyes is slowly being replaced by a deep, weary sadness. It's a painful transformation to watch, but it feels like a step toward healing. Sadness, at least, is an emotion. Emptiness was a void. You start talking to each other again, not about anything important, just small things. The weather, a lame fox you saw at the edge of the woods, the hesitant, fragile beginnings of a conversation. A month or so later, the sound of the church bell rings out across the valley, but this time, it's not from us, or to mark the hours. It's a joyful, chaotic ringing, another wedding. It's the son of the blacksmith, a young man named William, marrying a girl from a neighboring hamlet. The entire village prepares for the celebration. This time, the mood is different. The blacksmith is a respected man, and his son is well liked. The bride's family is bringing a generous dowry. There is a genuine sense of festivity in the air. You and Alara are expected to attend. To decline would be a social insult, a sign that you are cutting yourselves off from the community. So you go. You stand at the back of the small crowd as the new couple emerges from the church. Blinking in the afternoon sun, they are both beaming, their faces shining with a pure, uncomplicated happiness. The villagers cheer. They throw grain. They shout blessings that are full of genuine warmth, and it's like a knife twisting in your heart. You look at William. He stands tall and proud, his arm wrapped possessive lie around his new wife. There is no shadow in his eyes. He is not thinking about the castle on the hill. He is not filled with a cold, sickening dread. He is simply a happy groom. You feel a wave of envy so powerful it makes you dizzy. It's a bitter, poisonous feeling. Why him, why not you? What did you do to deserve having your own wedding day, your own happiness, so brutally stolen? You look at the bride. She is laughing, her face tilted up to her new husband. She is carefree. She is not worried about being led away by the Lord's men. She is not facing a night of terror. And then you understand. The blacksmith is not a serf, not in the same way you are. He is a freeman, a skilled artisan who owns his own tools and his own small house. He pays taxes to the Lord, yes, and owes him service in wartime. But his person, his family, they are not property in the same way yours are. The custom does not apply to him. This distinction is a crucial one that modern observers often miss, painting medieval society with a single, broad brush. The reality was a complex tapestry of social statuses. There were serfs tied to the land, free peasants who rented land, skilled artisans, and many other gradations, each with a different set of rights and obligations. The line between free and unfree was the most important social division of the age. Historians still debate the exact legal and social mechanics of these distinctions, which varied hugely by region and over time. But the core difference was one of personal liberty. For a man like William, the Lord was a political master. For you, he was an owner. You watch the happy couple, and you are overcome with a sense of your own lowly position. You are on the bottom rung of a very tall ladder. The casual joy of this wedding is a stark, brutal reminder of the chains that bind you. Alara touches your arm. You turn and look at her. She has been watching you, not the couple. She sees the envy, the bitterness on your face, and in her eyes, you see a flicker of shared understanding. She feels it too. The injustice, the unfairness of it all. She leans in close, her voice a bare whisper, meant only for you. Their happiness does not lessen ours. It's the most she has said to you in months. And the words, as simple as they are a lifeline. She is not just lost in her own sorrow. She is here, with you, seeing your pain. She is reminding you that what you have, this fragile, broken thing you are trying to rebuild, is still yours. It may be scarred and battered. You look away from the celebrating crowd, away from the happy groom and his laughing bride. You look at your wife, at the quiet strength in her eyes, and for the first time, you don't just feel the bitterness of what you lost. You see the flicker of pride in what you have managed to hold on to. You survived. You are still standing, together, and in this cruel, unjust world. That in itself is a kind of victory. The wedding celebration continues long into the night, but you and Dolores slip away early. The forced cheerfulness is too much to bear. You walk home in silence, but it's a different kind of silence now. It's not a void, it's a shared space, filled with the unspoken understanding that passed between you at the church. Back in the cottage, the quiet feels like a comfort, not a prison. You sit at the table, the embers of the fire casting a soft glow. The events of the day, the joyful wedding, the stark reminder of your own station have unsettled something deep inside you. I check the trap tomorrow, you say, breaking the silence. You haven't told her about your secret acts of poaching, but somehow, you feel she needs to know, not the details, but the intent. You need her to know you are not passively accepting your fate. She looks at you, her expression serious. She nods. Just once. She understands. It's a dangerous game you're replaying. My cousin, she says, her voice quiet and distant. He lives in the port city. 2 days, walk from here, if you avoid the main roads. You stop what you're doing, your hands still. A port city. It feels like another world. You've never been more than 5 miles from your village in your entire life. The world you know is this valley, these fields, that castle on the hill. He works on the docks, she continues. He as a cooper, making barrels. He wrote to my father once, on a piece of parchment. A priest wrote the words for him. He said the city is crowded, dirty, but a man can find work. A man can disappear. Disappear. The word hangs in the air between you. To flee. It's the ultimate taboo, the most desperate gamble. To be a serf is to be bound to the land. Your name is in the Lord's records. You belong here. To run away is to make yourself an outlaw, a fugitive from labor. If you are caught, the punishment is severe. A public flogging, branding on the cheek, and being forcibly returned to your master. You would be a marked man for life. And yet, the city, it represents a different kind of life. A life without a lord breathing down your neck. A life where your name is your own, not just a line in someone else's ledger. The idea of urban migration for peasants is a fascinating area of historical study. City, with their guilds, markets, and relative anonymity, offered a tantalizing promise of freedom. Many medieval towns had charters that included the principle of stadluft matched free city air makes you free. This meant that if a runaway serf could live within the city walls for a year and a day without being reclaimed by their lord, they were legally considered a free person. But historians debate how effective this 1 year, 1 day rule really was in practice. Was it a genuine pathway to liberty, or a myth that lured desperate people into an equally harsh, if different, form of urban poverty and exploitation? The risks were enormous. What would we do there, you ask? The question feeling heavy and dangerous on your tongue. We have no skills for a city. We only know the land. We know how to work, Elora says, and for the first time, you hear a spark of the old fire in her voice. We know how to survive. Is it a harder life than this to be hungry in a city instead of hungry in a field, at least in the city? The hunger would be our own. Our failures would be our own. Not his. She doesn't have to say his name. He is the silent third person in the room. You look around your small cottage. This is the only home you have ever known. Your father was born in this hut. Your memories are soaked into its wattle and daub walls. The thought of abandoning it all, of stepping out into a world you cannot imagine, is terrifying. You would be trading the familiar tyranny of the castle for the unknown dangers of a city you've only heard about in stories. But what are you holding on to? A life of labor for another man's profit. A life under the constant shadow of humiliation. A life where your wife looks at you with sadness in her eyes and you both have to pretend you don't know why. You look at Honora. The discussion has brought a faint flush of color to her cheeks. The idea of leaving, as terrifying as it is, has also sparked something in her. Hope. It's a dangerous, fragile thing, but it's there. We would have nothing, you say, testing the idea, testing her resolve. We would have to leave everything behind. We would have each other, she replies simply. And we would be free. Free. The word is so foreign, so versed. You try to imagine what it means. To wake up in the morning and know that your day belongs to you. To know that your children, if you were ever to have them, would be born into freedom, not bondage. It's an impossible choice. The terror of the known versus the terror of the unknown. To stay is to endure a slow, grinding erosion of the soul. To leave is to risk everything: your life, your security, the only world you've ever known, on a desperate gamble for a ghost of a chance at a better life. You don't make a decision. You can't. The idea is too enormous, too terrifying to grasp all at once. But the conversation has changed something. A door has been opened in your minds. Before tonight, your world was confined to this valley. Now, you know there is an elsewhere. There is an escape. The question is no longer whether you are trapped. The question is whether you have the courage to try and break out of the trap. The idea of escape, once spoken aloud, takes on a life of its own. It's a secret you and Delara now share. A dangerous ember you nurture in the quiet of your cottage. You don't speak of it every day, but it's always there. A new foundation upon which you are starting to build. It changes the way you see the world. Every sunrise is a potential day to leave. Every sunset is a decision to stay one more night. You continue your small acts of rebellion. You check your trapline in the Lord's woods, and a few times, you are successful. A rabbit, a fat pheasant. The meat is a welcome addition to your meager diet, but the real nourishment is the act itself. Every meal you steal from the Lord's land is a small victory, a tiny chip in the stone wall of his authority. It's your own pride at war. Then, one day, news trickles down from the castle into the village. It arrives not as a formal announcement, but in bits and pieces of gossip, carried by a stable hand, then passed on by the blacksmith, until it spreads through the fields like wildfire. The Lord is in trouble. It's not the kind of trouble you could ever cause. It's trouble on a scale you can barely comprehend. The story is that he invested a huge sum of money, more money than you could imagine, in a shipment of wool being sent overseas. He was part of a consortium of nobles, all hoping to get rich from the burgeoning textile trade with Flanders. But the ship carrying the precious cargo sank in a storm. Everything was lost. To you, a storm is something that fattens your crops or makes the river flood. To the Lord, this storm was a financial catastrophe. Yes, the whispers say, ruined. He owes a fortune to moneylenders from the city, powerful men who do not care about his title or his land. For the first time in your life, you see a crack in the castle wall. The fortress on the hill, which has always been a symbol of unassailable, permanent power, suddenly seems fragile. You realize that the Lord, for all his authority over you, is himself just a player in a much larger game. He is subject to forces he cannot control, just like you are. The whims of the weather, the dangers of the sea, The complex world of money and debt, these things can humble a nobleman just as easily as a blight can humble a peasant. This vulnerability of the ruling class is a key aspect of medieval life that is often lost in the simple narrative of oppressor and oppressed. While lords held immense power over their subjects, they were also caught in their own webs of obligation, ambition, and risk. They engaged in high-stakes political maneuvering, costly wars, and volatile economic ventures. A bad investment, a lost battle, or a fall from favor with the king could shatter a noble family's fortunes. The historical record is littered with accounts of aristocratic families rising and falling with breathtaking speed. The castle on the hill might look permanent, but the family living inside it was often on much shakier ground than the peasants below imagined. A few days later, you see the proof with your own eyes. A carriage, far finer than any you have ever seen, rumbles down the road from the city. To stern-faced men in dark, rich clothes emerge and are admitted to the castle. They are the moneylenders' agents, come to collect their due. The lord is forced to sell off assets. You see a dozen of his finest horses being led away. A cart loaded with silver plates and tapestries is trundled out of the castle gates. He has even sold a tract of his forest, the very woods where you set your traps, to a neighboring baron. The fear that the lord has always inspired in the village begins to curdle into something else: contempt. You hear the other men talking by the well. Their voices are no longer filled with cowed respect, but with a kind of grim satisfaction. The god has shown he can bleed. You look at the castle now, and it doesn't seem like a predator's den anymore. It seems diminished, an empty shell. The power it held was not just in its stone walls, but in the idea of its invincibility, and that idea has been shattered. The lord is not a force of nature. He is just a man, a flawed, fading man who made a bad gamble. You look at Alara that evening, and she looks at you. The fear of him, the great, suffocating fear that has dictated your entire existence, has begun to evaporate. It's not gone entirely, but it no longer has the same power. He is still the Lord. He still holds your life in his hands, but he is no longer a monster in a fairy tale. He is just a man in debt. The thought of escape is still terrifying, but the reason to stay, the overwhelming, paralyzing fear of the Lord's power, has been weakened. The cage door is still locked, but you now see that the bars are rusty. The Lord's misfortune changes the atmosphere of the valley. The air, once thick with fear, is now thin and uncertain. The reeves who enforce his will seem less confident, their commands less sure. The entire structure of power, which seemed so rigid and eternal, now feels loose and unstable. This shift in the world outside is mirrored by a shift inside your cottage. The slow, painstaking process of healing has been accelerated by the Lord's decline. His weakness has, in a strange way, given you both strength. The ghost of his power, which haunted your home, has begun to fade. The silence between you and Dilara is no longer a chasm of unspoken trauma, but a space of quiet companionship. You find yourselves talking again. Truly talking. She tells you about her mother's failing eyesight. You tell her about a dream you had. They are small, simple things, but they are the threads from which a life is woven back together. One evening, you are sitting outside the cottage, watching the last of the light fade from the sky. Alara is mending one of your tunics, her hands moving with a steady, familiar rhythm. You are carving a small piece of wood, not into a bird this time, but into a new handle for a tool. It's a comfortable silence, born not of fear, but of peace. You look at her, at the way the dim light catches the auburn in her hair, at the focused, determined set of her jaw. You see flashes at the girl you grew up with, the woman you fell in love with, but you also see the new person she has become. The hollowed-out victim is gone. In her place is a woman of quiet, formidable strength. She has walked through the fire and survived. The scars are there. You know they will always be there, but they are a part of her now, a testament to her resilience. She looks up, as if she feels your gaze, and meets your eyes. She offers you a small, tentative smile. It's the first genuine smile you have seen from her since your wedding day. It's not the carefree smile of her youth, but something new, wiser, sadder, but real. And in that moment, you realize you have changed, too. The shame that consumed you, the feeling of impotence and failure, has been replaced by something else. A quiet resolve. You survived. 2. You stared into the abyss of your own rage and despair. And you didn't let it destroy you. You didn't cast her out. You stayed. You fought back in your own small way. You chose to build something new in the ruins. The bond between you now is not the simple, naive love of two young people with dreams of the future. That love was shattered on your wedding night. The bond you have forged in the months since is something far stronger, far more profound. It has been tempered in the fires of sheer trauma, shame, and a quiet, stubborn refusal to be broken. It's a bond no one else can understand, and that no one, not even a lord, can now take away. This process of post-traumatic growth, as modern psychology would term it, is a powerful human phenomenon. It's the idea that people who endure great psychological struggle can sometimes experience positive growth afterward. This is not to say the trauma is a good thing, but that the process of confronting it can lead to a deeper sense of self, a greater appreciation for life, and more meaningful relationships. Historians who study the long-term effects of societal traumas like war or famine often look for evidence of this resilience. The debate continues on how to measure such a deeply personal change, but the narrative of survival and rebuilding is a constant theme in human history. The nights are getting colder. You say, stating the obvious. Yes, she replies, her needle still for a moment. We will need more wood for the fire. It's a simple exchange, mundane, but it's everything. It's a conversation about the future. A future you will face together. In this cottage, the talk of fleeing to the city has faded. It was a door you needed to know was there, an escape hatch that gave you hope. But you realize now that true freedom isn't about escaping to a different place. It's about rebuilding your own place, on your own terms. The Lord's power over you is broken, not because you defeated him, but because you and Laura refused to let him defeat you. You have taken the poison he injected into your lives and, together, you have found the antidote. It is not forgiveness. It is not forgetting. It is the quiet, defiant act of choosing to build a life, a house, a home, in the very shadow of the castle where it was meant to be destroyed. The first frost of late autumn arrives, blanketing the valley in a delicate layer of silver. The air is sharp and clean, and your breath blooms in front of you as you step out of the cottage. The harvest is done. The Lord's share in the church's tithe have been taken, and what little remains is stored away for the winter. It's a time of rest, of waiting for the land to sleep. You look up at the castle on the hill. It looks tired. A few of the smaller towers are shrouded in scaffolding, not for new construction, but for repairs that have since been abandoned. The great stone beast seems to be crumbling from within, weakened by its master's failing fortunes. It no longer holds any terror for you. It's just a pile of stones, a monument to a fading power. You and Delara have found a new rhythm. The wall between you is gone, dismantled brick by painful brick. What remains is a landscape of scars that you both know how to navigate. You know the places that are still tender, the words that should not be said, but you have also built new paths, new places of comfort and shared strength. One morning, you are walking back from the well, a heavy bucket of water in each hand. Elara is walking beside you, carrying a basket of firewood. It's a simple, domestic scene, the kind of moment you once dreamed of. As you approach your cottage, you see a figure on horseback coming down the path. For a heartbeat, the old fear clutches at you, a man on a horse, coming from the direction of the castle. But this rider is different. He is not one of the Lord's thuggish reeves. He is slighter, younger, and he looks nervous. He brings his horse to a halt before you. You are the man who married the girl. Elara, he asks. He can't even meet your eyes, focusing on a spot somewhere over your shoulder. I am her husband, you say, your voice cold and hard. You place the water buckets down, freeing your hands. You don't know why, but you want them free. The young man swallows. The Lord, he is unwell. The priest says he is dying. He has moments of clarity. He asks to see you. Both of you. You stare at him, incredulous. The Lord wants to see you. The man who shattered your life, who you have only ever seen as a remote figure of terror, wants an audience. Why to gloat one last time to offer a deathbed apology? The thought is absurd. You look at Elora. Her face is pale, but her expression is firm. She looks from the right at you, and then she gives a small, almost imperceptible nod. It is her decision as much as yours. You will go. You need to see this story to its end. The walk up to the castle is one you have made 1,000 times in your nightmares. But now, in the cold light of day, it's just a steep, muddy path. The castle, up close, is even more dilapidated than it looks from the valley. The stone is green with moss, the massive wooden gate splintered and worn. You are led through cold, echoing corridors. There are no guards, no bustling servants. The place feels abandoned, haunted by the ghosts of its former grandeur. You are brought to a large bedchamber. The room is vast and opulent, but a layer of dust covers everything. The air is stale and smells of sickness. And there, in a massive, curtained bed, is the Lord. He is not the giant from your nightmares. He is a small, withered old man, lost in a sea of blankets and pillows. His skin is waxy and yellow, his breath a shallow, rattling sound. His eyes, when they find you, are clouded with pain and confusion. He struggles to speak, his voice a dry whisper. I am dying, he rasps, a fact that is painfully obvious. The priest says I must make my peace. He looks at Elora. I took what was not mine to take. It's an admission, not an apology. Not really. It's the self-serving act of a dying man terrified of eternal damnation. It's for his soul, not hers. The historical relationship between confession, penance, and the social order is complex, to powerful. A deathbed confession was often seen as a way to wipe the slate clean, a final transaction to ensure salvation. Whether these confessions brought any real comfort to their victims is a question that history cannot answer. The debate continues as to whether this was genuine repentance or the ultimate act of privilege, the belief that even sins against the powerless could be erased with a few words to God. You feel a surge of the old rage. He wants absolution from you. He thinks a few whispered words can undo the damage he has done. But then you look at Elora. She stands tall and straight, her hands clasped in front of her. She looks at the pathetic, dying man in the bed, and you see no fear in her eyes. You see no hatred. You say nothing. He is irrelevant. His apology, his damnation, it doesn't matter. His power over her is utterly gone. He is just a dying old man, and she is a survivor. She turns, without a word, and walks out of the room. You follow her, leading the Lord to his God. You step out of the castle gate, back into the crisp, clean air of the autumn day. You look down at your village, at your small cottage with its trail of smoke rising into the sky. It is your home. You look at Elora, her face turned toward the sun, and you realize the story is not about him. It was never about him. It was about you. It was about the two of you, standing here, together. In the light, another sun is rising, and this one is yours. And so, the story of that night, and all the nights that follow, begins to fade, not into forgiveness, but into the quiet fabric of a life rebuilt. The shadow of the castle still lies upon the valley, but it no longer reaches into your home. The memory remains, a scar that proves you survived a wound that was meant to be fatal. You find your peace not in grand gestures of vengeance or justice, but in the small, repeating rhythms of a shared life. In the warmth of the fire on a cold winter's night. In the taste of bread baked from grain you harvested together. In the comfortable silence that speaks of a bond forged in the deepest of sorrows. Your life is not the one you dreamed of as a young man, full of simple joys and unblemished happiness. It is something deeper, harder, and more resilient. A life earned, not given. And now, as our story comes to a close, perhaps you can feel the weight of your own day begin to lift. Let the worries and the struggles of your world soften and recede. The journey you took tonight was a difficult one, through fear and shame, but you have emerged on the other side, into the calm light of a new dawn. Your own bed is a safe harbor, a place of rest. The world outside can wait. Let the silence of your room be a comfort, a quiet space for your mind to settle. The story is over. It's time to sleep. The end of the article. Good night.